Right. Let's see. As you can see, we've got the first exercise finished here. So I thought I'd create a video for the second exercise just so that you can see the whole process and not have to rely on written words. So, File, choosing New to create a new document. I'm going to call this Exercise 2. And we see here that I'm making the size A3. You'll also notice up here that I'm using Illustrator. The color mode is going to be RGB, and I'll explain that in due course. A3, RGB, exercise 2, and I click on OK. So here is our new blank piece of paper. I'll just close that. And we go File, File, and Place. And what placing means is that I'm going to put an image inside this document. So I'm going to go to the Context and Practice folder that I've already created. And I'm going to go into my Exercise 2 folder. And there is this file here called me PSD. If I press the space bar while I'm here, I get a preview of the image. So this is me, it's called me, and I'm going to click on Place. I click the button and I get the image. Another option is, if I'll undo that, and I'll undo that, is if I go File, Place, and I choose me once again, and now if I click and drag, and we can see that I can set the size of the document. Now at the moment I'm not too worried. If we zoom up on this image, so I'm going to go space bar and command key, and we see that I get a little magnifying glass. So I'll click, and there we can see the image in its entirety. Now, the first step is we're going to go to the layers option. So here's my layers palette. I'll just close that up. If you don't have that open in Illustrator, let's pretend that I don't, I'm going to Window and coming to Layers. We see there it is. If I want to keep it in my dock of all my tools, I come to here and we see that it's now this little icon here. For my purposes, I'm just going to have it floating out on this grey area of the screen. This layer I want to lock, so I'm not going to accidentally move and change things. Now, I could do it that way, and I could start working on top. But what I'm going to do, I'll just close that and that, is that instead, I'm not going to lock it, but I'm going to go to this area here, and I'm going to choose Template. What Template does is it locks it for me, but it also half grays it out. So that means I can do something on top on a new layer in black, because that's what I'm going to choose, and I'm going to see what's happening. In its previous state, if I used black on black, it would be hard to see what was happening. So this button here, as you can see, creates a new layer. So I'm clicking on that. So I'm going to work on layer 2, and layer 1, where I place the image, is my reference for where I'm going to be drawing. Now, you see here that it's called layer 1 and layer 2. With any digital document, you can have hundreds, if not thousands, of layers. It's always a good practice to double click on the layers as you create them and to give them a logical name. So This is called artwork because that is my original artwork. I could call it the scan or the PSD layer. And here I'm going to call this circles. Within your practice, it is often impossible to finish off a project in one go. So that imagine if you get halfway through this and you have to do something else, and it might be a few weeks before you come back to this project. If you have something that is miles long with hundreds of layers and everything's just called layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4 and so on, it's very hard to remember where you were. It's important to use your time efficiently, so naming your layers helps you be a better worker and therefore a more creative designer because you don't have to retrace all your steps and get caught in the dialogue of, now, where was I again? So here, I have two layers, one called circles, one called artwork. The next tool I'm going to use isn't the circle tool. Instead, I'm going to introduce a new tool to you. Over here, we have the paintbrush. Now, in the bottom corner is a little wee triangle. If I click on that, what the triangle indicates is that there are other tools hidden in here. So if I click on this, we see that we have the option of the paintbrush tool or the blob brush tool. Now the blob brush, not the bob brush, but the blob brush is what I wish to use. If I select this, we see that here I have a little wee circle indicating how big my blob is going to be. Using the square bracket keys on the keyboard, the left bracket key makes the brush smaller, the right bracket key makes the brush bigger. In combination with that, if I use, once again, spacebar and command key, I can zoom up on my image, and so I'll be able to work with my brush, the blob brush, in a more accurate fashion. So, what does the blob brush do? What it allows me to do is to create black stuff, digital paint, that is not a collection of paths, but is a filled in shape. It also means that I can keep adding to the shape. It is just going to be one shape that I can keep on adding to. So it is a blob that keeps on growing. I'll just delete that. So here is the process. I'm going to get my blob brush and I'm going to start painting in the outline of where the image is black. And this will take me a little while. I'm hoping in the editing I will be able to, let's make my brush a bit smaller, speed up this whole process. So give me a few minutes and I'll return soon. So you can see I'm changing the size of the brush so that I'm colouring in exactly. Now you'll notice here that when I did that last stroke, it kind of corrected itself. Let's go back, I'll show you again. So you can see I'm following the contours of where the pixels are, but it has smoothed itself out. Now why has that come about? To a certain extent, this is working against our intentions. Let's say I select this and I delete it. If I double click here, we see that we have the blob brush tool options. And here we have this thing called fidelity. If I wind it all the way up to smooth and I do a very slight curve, we can see how much it smooths it out. If I do a slightly wiggly line, it almost straightens it. Now, for our purposes, that's not what we want. We actually want to cover all this kind of bumpiness, not these individual pixels here, but something that does follow these contours. So we don't want any smoothing. I'm going to double click again, and I'm going to go, instead of smooth, to accurate. And I click on OK. So let's start that one more time. Okay, I had just paused the video for a few minutes there while I was working through the details. Now I can speed up the process with a larger brush and get the rest of it filled in reasonably quickly. Now you notice that I navigate myself around the screen when I'm zoomed in by holding my finger on the keyboard, the space bar of the keyboard, and that gives me this thing known as the grabber hand. So that means I can zoom in. Let's get my brush a bit smaller. Actually, I'm not too happy with that. There we go, that's a better stroke. And there. And there we are. We have finished our paintwork. If I turn off my artwork layer, we see there is the current result. Now, if I go to my select tool and I click on that, we see that at the moment it is in a few different pieces. Now, that's not entirely ideal. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and find all these pieces. Now, we'll see that inside here there are a few sub layers within my circles layer, and if I press the eyes, we see that there is the ability to turn things layers off and on. Now, if this happens to you, there's no need to panic. We want everything except for this detail here to be the same object. So I need to get this. So you notice how I click here to select it. I hold down the Shift key to add to my selection. So there is that. And then finally, there is that. I'm not choosing this one. So with these elements chosen, I'm now going to come to Window, and I'm going to choose Pathfinder. That pops open this palette here, and I'm going to choose my first option. What this means is that it will join everything together into one object. So I click on this, and now I have this one element here, and if I turn that off, there it all is. If I turn that off, there I am as two pieces. Now, what we're doing is we're working with dots. We're not working with solid blocks of colour. So to make the dots, what we need to do is, I'll just close this, we need to bring open our palette, our swatches palette. If you don't have that open, Window, Swatches, and there it is. Now, let's keep that open for the meantime. I'm going to draw a circle. Now, it's not going to be a big circle. It's not going to be a squashed circle, which is what we call, and you'll see up here, an ellipse. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to make sure that my width and height are exactly the same. This is called constrained proportions. I'm going to make it about that size. Now, I'm going to make a few of these, so it's fine to experiment. And in this exercise, you certainly should be experimenting. So, I draw my shape, and I get the Select tool. Now, if you don't have the circle here, just click and hold, and you might find it's one of these other ones. If you're new to Illustrator and you haven't used it before, normally its default setting is the rectangle. Click and hold. Choose choose ellipse tool, not rounded rectangle. Choose the ellipse tool. So I've drawn my circle, my dot, my point. I select it, and now I drag it over, as soon as it lets me, to swatches. We see that there's this little green plus sign next to the arrow. It means that I'm adding it to the swatches. And it puts it there. What I've done is, by adding it to the swatches, I've created an element known as a pattern. And you see that when I hold my pointer over it, it says Pattern Swatch 1. Now, if I select my shape, if I choose any of these ones up here, I just change my color. But with a pattern, if I click on this, I suddenly fill the painted area in with dots. Now, this is a very fast way to create something out of circles. But if we look at the circles, let's zoom right up, there's not a lot of space, and they're all stacked as a grid. Now, we can change that. Let's get my eye and do that as well. This is one result, and this is something that we saw very similar in our context lecture today, or last week, depending on how far you've come along. To edit the pattern, I'm going to double click on it, and this new palette opens up called Pattern Options. But before I do that, I'm going to save a copy, and I'm going to call this dots number 2. Click on OK. The new pattern has been added to your swatches panel. That's exactly what I want. And you see that it's over here. Any additional changes made while in pattern editing mode will be applied to the original pattern, not to the copy. And that's why I created my copy first, so that I always have my original pattern in an unedited state. So I have a few choices. I'll click on OK. Now, let's zoom up on this. The element in the middle is my original item. Everything that we see around it are the results of the pattern. So if I changed this by changing its color or changing the shape, we see that the pattern follows suit. I'll undo that. What I want to do is I want to come to my palette pattern options, and I'm not going to have grid. Instead, I'm going to choose brick by row. And we see now we have a more interesting use of spacing. There are a few other options there, and you are most welcome to experiment with them. The way that we get some real results from this is that if we choose this pattern tile tool button, if I click on that, that green box around my original element, it's turned blue. And what that allows me to do is to change the spacing. So if I push it out a little bit there, if I push it out a little bit up here, and a little bit out here, I'm having more control over my pattern, and I could create something that I'm really happy with. Okay, I'll undo all those, and I'll show you a shortcut. There we go, we're back to the beginning. I really do want brick by row, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Shift key and the Option key, and then I'm dragging it out from the corner. So that means I'm going to have an equal spacing from the center of the circle. That's the cat. Let's just drag that down a little bit more. And I'm happy with that. Now that I've done that, I'm going to click on the Done button. And I'm going to zoom out, and we can see what's happened. Now that's looking a lot better. But if I reflect upon it instantly, I think, let's select this, that those dots, no matter which way I have them, they're a bit large. So let's go back. I edit the pattern. There I am. There is my actual element, and you see that I've selected the item, and I have this green box. I'm going to shrink the size down of my circle. I'm going to choose my Pattern Tile Tool button, and I'm also going to shrink down the space around my element. I'm going to say Done on that, and now when I zoom out, I'm happier with that. That's okay. Once again, if I wish to edit it, let's zoom up on that. Select the element, make it smaller, or make it larger. Now this is up to you. And change the spacing around the element. There we go. Done. Okay. There. I think that is going to be us. Great. So how did I get that coloured effect? Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this whole layer, so that I don't need, I'll delete that. I'm going to get this group and I'm going to duplicate it. Now to duplicate a group, I grab that and I drag it down to the new layer icon. And now I've got two copies. So I could get this one and I'll just move it over there. Now you notice that when I move things around, we get some interesting interference with the circles. This is known as a moire pattern. M-O-R. Actually, I'm not going to spell it. I'm going to have to spell check that. My spelling is atrocious. Anyway, to now apply the colour, I select one of the layers and I'm going to come to this button here. It's called the Recolour Artwork button. I click on that. This palette appears. I'm going to choose the colour, and if I start winding up the brightness, that's B for brightness, so we're moving from black to white. S stands for saturation, so how much original colour is there, or how much white are we mixing into it? And then I can choose a colour that I wish to experiment with. So let's maybe move that right up. Let's get that quite bright. And if I click on OK, it didn't change colour. That's very interesting. Why did it work yesterday? Okay, and now that I've created my duplicate, on to creating some different fields of colour. We're going to repeat the process that we'd done originally by duplicating our pattern. My new pattern, I'm going to double click on this and I'm going to press Save a Copy. I'm going to make this dots number 3. Click on OK and save a copy one more time and call this dots number 4. And don't forget, this dialog box says, because you've created a copy, any changes that you make here happen with the original, not the copy you've just made. Let's click on OK. So I'm done, and we see now that I have my pattern, dots number 3 and dots number 4. I'm going to choose dots number 3, and I'm going to select my original dot, and I'm going to click here on the fill color. I double click on that, and I'm going to choose a color. Now, it could be any color you want, but I'm going to go for a reasonably bright one. There we go, something like that. I click on OK, and we notice the whole pattern has changed. I'll accept that by clicking on Done. Now, nothing has changed to my image because I still have the original pattern applied. But now, I click on my new pattern, and we see things change quite radically. Okay, I'm going to get the next layer, and we see what happens now. We're starting to get something that looks a bit more visually commanding, something more interesting. And I'm going to edit pattern number 4, my dot pattern number 4. And let's say now with this one, before I had a very warm color, now I'm going to go down to a cooler color, somewhere around the blues. I'm going to click on OK here. Let's accept that. The whole pattern has changed. Once again, I click on Done. And we see now that this is updated. Now, the reason why that updated is because I had selected that and applied the pattern to it first. So now I have this. As one final addition to what I'm doing, I'm going to select my top layer, and I'm going to come to Window and choose Appearance. And we see that it deals with a group, and there's this thing called opacity. Now I'm clicking on that, and I'm not going to change the opacity value, because what that does is that just makes things, elements, fade out. Instead, I'm going to change the way the color works. Now, I will explain this in full detail at a later date when we look at our color theory. But at the moment, we're going to go from normal, and we're going to choose multiply. And you can see now, if I zoom up, we can see that the colors are mixing themselves together. So red and blue, as we all know, equals purple. If I had blue and yellow, the color in between would be green. So that's something you can experiment with. Just for safety's sake, if you're not sure which element is on top of the other, you can always tell by looking in your layers, and you can get your group, and you can come once again to your appearance palette and go opacity, and again make that multiply. So you can be sure that when you mix the two together, I see that my eye has gone for a walk now. There we are. And that's how we get our result. If we zoom away far enough, it still resembles the picture, the photograph, the original Photoshop. But as we get closer, we see that it is composed of dots. Okay, your turn. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial.